Hey guys, we're back again with another armor kit. This time we'll be looking at Platz's 1/35th scale ARL44 in grills and Panzer markings. Let's open her on up and take a look. So right away, big thing that I was surprised by was the fact just how much of the main hull is done as a single piece assembly. A lot of these kits, this section here and here would be detached as separate parts that you'd have to assemble. So that is an interesting approach that they've taken on this. Beyond that, there's a decent amount of detail that's already molded in. So this will allow you to speed along a little bit. Now, continuing on, we've got our main turret piece. Again, detailing is more than adequate, I would say. As well as a couple other odds and end pieces and part of the exhaust system, as well as the gun brake. Get into the exhaust system a little later as we go. Moving on, we've got the bottom of the hull, and even though it's the bottom, still has a decent amount of detail. And we do have our fairly large long-barreled gun. Unfortunately, it's done as a two-piece assembly, so you will have a fairly substantial seam line you're going to need to clean up after you assemble it. Front and back of the main hull, as well as our sides, and a couple other odds and ends on this sprue, but interesting enough, some parts for the exhaust system. Again, when we'll get to it. Now, the last sprue before we have a duplicate is our main suspension sprue, which contains all of our running wheels, sprockets, and idlers. Now, this is where you're probably going to have a bit of a headache, not because of complexity, just because of the sheer just how many of these you're going to have to assemble for the wheels. This is where you're going to have a lot of time spent. Beyond that, the detailing on everything is more than sufficient. I'm quite impressed. Now, as I mentioned before, we have more parts for the exhaust system. This thing has one of the oddest exhaust systems I've ever seen on a tank. We'll see it a little more detail once we get into the instructions, but yeah, it's an odd one. So, continuing on, obviously we've got a big bag of individual track links. They're all basically given to you just like this. I've done nothing to them. It's just pre-clipped and ready to go. Now, one thing I was surprised with about this kit and was not expecting was a small spread of photo-etched parts for the grills. This was a nice inclusion. I was not expecting this at all. So to have this is always nice. Moving on to the decals, they're pretty basic, as we've seen with previous grills and Panzer kits. Single marking option for one of the tanks from the series. Now, let's move on to the instructions. And no, that is quite literally all that there is as far as part count for this kit. It's a surprisingly simple kit despite its size. Now, as far as assembly goes, as I said before, you're going to be spending a long time getting all those wheels done. So that is something to be aware of. Now, one area I did find a little confusing was here, is attaching those guys to the hull. As if you look at the diagram, it would almost seem to make you think you'd have to clip off these side parts and replace them with these. However, if we look at the actual hull, those parts do not exist. So there was a little confusion, at least on my part, as far as, what you're supposed to do with those parts. So that is something to be aware of. You don't need to clip anything, just that's how they're supposed to go on. I think they could have done a little bit better job of depicting this by not including them in the finished position. So, it is what it is, though. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot that's going to potentially give you a headache. It's a pretty straightforward and simple build. And despite its size, surprisingly low part count. Now, one area I did find weird is this exhaust system. This is mostly because of just I've never encountered an exhaust like this, as it's basically passing from this section through these, I'm not sure what, before exiting. So that I just found really odd, really strange, and why there's no real sort of gotcha as far as assembling them, save for maybe a little vagueness in the instructions. But yeah, just odd thing on this tank. Beyond that, though, after you get through there, it's pretty much a straightforward rush to the finish, assembling the turret and the gun, before finally getting the tracks on. As I said before, single marking option and paint scheme. So, this kit is an oddball one. I mean, I guess you could, in some ways, call it doing more with less. As despite having a fairly low part count, you would think for a tank of that size, it surprisingly packs in a lot of detail. So they were just very smart with the engineering of this kit, in my opinion. Is this a kit for everyone? Potentially. If for no other reason, you really don't see French tanks, as you pretty much only see either American, British, or German tanks. Oh, and obviously also Soviet, before I forget. But yeah, this definitely is an interesting little kit. So that was a look at Platz's 1/35th scale ARL44 and Grills and Panzer markings. Until next time.